Greetings, I think we're live, and welcome to the July 2025 predictions and psychic forecast. And this is not doom and gloom. This is for awareness and ascension and growth. However, this is the energies of July, and I'll explain why. And it's not doom and gloom, it's an opportunity, and I'll explain why this is the energy for July in this live stream and how it's going to affect us and what we can do to raise our vibrations to make this the best time and the best months of our lives. So if you're watching this as a video, I'm going to give the live people another minute or two. I'll timestamp when we begin the video, so I'm going to give them a minute or two to come on. And this is going to be a long hour, maybe a little bit over, but I'm going to also do a condensed version that I'm going to release probably on Monday. So if you want to wait for the shorter version, you're welcome. But this is our deep dive into a lot of things that are going on. This is an extremely changeable month now. So hello, I see people are getting on. Hello, Yvonne and Kathleen and Roseanne and Beverly and Brooke and Robin. Welcome. Hello from New Jersey. And anybody that's coming in and you want to let us know where in this big wide world you are tuning in from, please let us know. Hello, Susan again, and Yvonne again, and let's spirit guide. That's Laura, Brooke, and Michael. Welcome. And hello, Jeremiah and Angie. So yeah, we have some new people here. So again, if you want to introduce yourselves and let us know. So I see Lauren got in, and Laura from Texas. Welcome. So I've got my water, I've got my glasses on, which means I mean business. I've got like 25 pages of notes, so I'm gonna really try to rip through these and not elaborate so much, which is my nature is to elaborate and to talk a lot. So it's kind of like I've got to go against my own nature, but I'm gonna do that for you guys to get all this information out. And Martha from California, Sandy, I can't wait either. So, all right. So, I mean, more people are going to come on, but a lot of this, especially the beginning part, I was doing notes and it actually came more of a channeling. So, I'm going to read directly from my notes and I'm going to be looking down at my notes a lot. Like I said, I tried to section things off to make it organized, but there's a little bit of jumping around. So, just try to bear with me. It's been a really, really busy week on a lot of fronts in my world. And, so anyway, so let us begin. So this is not doom and gloom, but this is a time to be aware and prepare. So again, the Tower card, it's key 16, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So is World War III looming? What is Trump's future? We'll dive into all of these things. I mean, geopolitics, not my favorite subject, but if I'm going to do a psychic forecast, politics has to be part of it. So we're going to remain as non-partisan, as objective as possible, because I haven't really liked a lot of what I've been seeing on the comment threads and some of my predictions, because we're trying to give you a holistic prediction so you can prepare, like a forecast, so that you can prepare for the events that are coming, be aware and all of that stuff, and not to make this like a political debate. And I use the word debate loosely. There's been some really negative, nasty comments drawn at the other side of the divide. We're here to try to heal the divide and to understand what the greater purpose is of the Trump presidency and other facets of world politics, and how that plays into our global ascension and our awakening and our progression of evolution as human beings, basically. So it should be treated as opportunity. So here's a brief channeled information. The next phase of the teardown has begun and shall continue into August as a new and higher consciousness begins to take over the collective. This time is about opportunity, turning challenge into gift, using the earth changes to springboard humanity into higher consciousness. This is the new energy that exposes so much that's not fair and not right in this world, and how the primitive human ego is still running the show on planet Earth. And in these new higher energies that are affecting the planet, affecting the cosmos, this must fall, and it has to happen. The tower has to fall. As a collective, we have the opportunity to tear down the old towers that are not just, and create and the ones that create so much suffering for so many, and rise up in consciousness to create a renaissance in society out of what could otherwise be a very dark night of the soul for humanity. So, anyway, in the forecast, we'll explain the energies and potentials, not only if humanity, but only if humanity stays on the lower timeline. So some of these, more less favorable predictions would be more like if we stay more in the primitive and fail to ascend as a collective. And we'll talk more about that as we get along. A psychic forecast is just that, it's a forecast. People like myself that do this work, I mean, we're only able to pick up the energies of the now and get visions or feelings about the future, but it has to be in these current timelines. So we change the energy of the current now, which contains infinite possibilities. It changes those timelines. So don't expect me or anybody that does this work to be 100% accurate. We want to prepare you for potentials, and the more difficult ones, we want to also give you some information to maybe help to soften them, or for them to not happen at all, basically. So anyway, where were we? So this forecast will explain the energy and potentials. All right, and there's opportunity to turn things around, and I can read my own writing, and soften the blows of change while turning negative future potentials into positive ones. So I offer this forecast to serve the positive change. Be aware, not scared. I have to admit, I borrowed that line from Joseph Tittle, and I use it now as my own. For when you prepare for the worst, you usually get the best. And I've seen that in my life. I've seen that all along. Prepare for the worst, you'll usually get the best if you prepare for the worst. It's when we're caught with our pants down that the worst happen. I've seen this time and time again. The more you stay out of fear, the less likely bad events will happen, basically. So we want to talk about the numerology and just a few broader strokes of astrology to paint the picture, and then go into the predictions, basically. So let's see. Hello, Michelle, it's ethical intuitive. We try to be ethical intuitives here also. Jody, Lucretia, and anybody else. Susan, the truth can be painful. So in numerology, it's a number 16 month. This card is key 16 in the tarot. In Chaldean numerology, the symbol for number 16 is the shattered citadel, which is basically the tower, basically the same meaning. So the description of number 16 is spiritual destruction. Or that's the wrong way of putting it. It's destruction of the physical based on the spiritual evolution that we're going through. Much better way of describing that. A necessary step in building a better tomorrow. Much of what is unsustainable in our evolution to higher consciousness now falls, so much will be exposed. New things, so a lot of the corruption and all of that, it's getting exposed to an even higher level now. It's been a process that's been going on for a while. Reason it seems worse now is that suppressed trauma, anger, and fear is being released from the collective and must play out in some way in the earth. So these higher frequencies, or I should say higher energies, because the frequencies are getting higher, but it's more the velocity of energy that's increasing. And when that happens, it kind of shakes things loose that get stored in our subconscious fields and the earth fields. They relate to a lot of pain and suffering from the past, and a lot of wars, and a lot of destruction and negativity or whatever. So as these higher frequencies hit, it's got to be released, and it has to play out. So hang in there, stay in your heart, stay in your power, basically. So the reason is all right. So must play on the earth plane. So but it will pass, especially if we do not hold on and we work on our own spiritual evolution. Number 16 reduces to the spiritual intuitive number 7, which is Neptune ruled. Neptune is a major player, as is Saturn, in this month. A lot of astrological aspects, and I'm not going to go into all that, but there's plenty of good astrologers on YouTube that can break down the very intense aspects that are going on in the month of July. I'm just going to touch on some of these. So 16. So the number 16 version of 7 has the potential to dispel lies and illusion. That's part of the Neptune energy, as well as intuition and dreams and psychism and stuff like that. Neptune ruled and okay, so Neptune's going to station on the 4th. It's actually stationing now, which means it's not moving to go retrograde at 2 degrees Aries, the first sign Aries. Aries is also a sign of war and aggression. It's Mars energy also. And the Tower card, by the way, is ruled by Mars as well. So we see a lot of parallels there. So Neptune will station on the 4th and gain, but it's going to stay conjunct with Saturn and almost come into an exact conjunction within minutes in, I think, the middle of July. And then actually in 2026, it's going to hit its exact conjunction. So a lot of things are going to really happen next year too. So it's going to stay conjunct with Saturn all month. And Saturn itself is going to go retrograde on the 13th of the month. So in planet station, whether they're going retrograde or direct, they're more powerful because they're staying in the same part, and there's a magnetic and energetic resonance that affects the collective fields also. So if you follow astrology, it's usually very accurate, and there's reasons for it. Also, Mercury is beginning its approach, I think, on the 2nd or 3rd of the month to its next retrograde, which is going to be on the 18th. So right around the 2nd, around the 6th or 7th of July, heavy duty action going on, heavy changes in the Earth. The Neptune-Saturn conjunction will favorably aspect other 2 outer planets, assisting in a period of teardown, leading to positive and millennial changes on our planet. So what's going on? Neptune and Saturn are at the apex of a triple sextile with Uranus on one side, and it's actually going to go into Gemini sometime in July. I don't have the dates. And then it becomes in Western astrology a natural sextile rather than an angular one. It's still in the 29 degrees Taurus now, but anyway, and flanking on the other side is Pluto in Aquarius. So Uranus and Pluto are trine, and in the middle of that trine is the Neptune-Saturn conjunction. When was the last time the 4 outer planets were all in a harmonious conjunction? Never in our lifetimes, and probably not since before Christ, to be honest with that. And these are the generational effects. This is a huge spiritual awakening that's happening in our planet as these outer planets express generational movements, basically. So leave it at that. Also, Mercury will begin its approach its next retrograde, which begins on the 18th of the month. We said that already. Neptune, Saturn conjunct will favorably aspect. All right, this appeared teardown leading to positive millennial changes. Neptune, Saturn in Aries brings a lot of focus on war, aggression, but Saturn is about lessons, karma. Neptune about the spiritual dimensions, dreams, illusions, forming the center point of the sextile trine configuration. Astrology, numerologically, the table is set for the biggest global changes since World War II, perhaps even bigger. We're seeing that playing out, right? Maybe 5,000 years. Yeah. Hello, Pink Lady, and anybody else that I'm missing. Beautiful guitar, welcome. I'm trying to keep half an eye on the comments also. Now, the full moon on July 10th is huge because it's at 18 degrees Capricorn. Capricorn is of the Earth. Mars is a secondary ruler of that. 18 is a 9. It's also Mars ruled numerology, and it's very Earth. So it's going to herald the completion of a governmental and financial process and help catalyze further exposure of corruption while enhancing science and technology breakthroughs through July, as well as extraterrestrial contact and stuff like that. Capricorn's sign is really about understanding using tools, whether that's technology or whatever tools it's about. And so a lot of invention, a lot of practical use of that. And at 18, there's a completion cycle of the action planet Mars, basically. So also the Earth, Capricorn, this could make appear between July the 10th and 18th, especially conducive to geological events like earthquakes and volcanoes. We'll talk more a little bit about that. So that's the full moon. Very action-packed, very energetic. There's other aspects that are going on that's going to help, along with the solar activity, to bring more energy through the earth, and anything that's suspect, that's teetering on the verge of going into an earthquake or volcano. It also affects weather events. The space weather affects the troposphere. And as I talk more about this stuff, I'm not going to get too deep into the science, but I'm trained as a meteorologist. That's what I graduated with, and I know a thing or two about space weather and geology also. And also, I started to follow Stefan Burns' channel that gives us great information about space weather and geology and stuff like that. So between those things, I'm pretty well versed. Not an expert, but pretty well versed. So anyway, the new moon. So we'll go into that. That's on the 24th at 2 degrees Leo, which makes this possibly our most significant new moon of the year, maybe even more than the new moon we just came out of. And part of that is because the 2 degrees, 2 is lunar numerology, and Leo's the sun. So the moon and the sun are highlighted during a moon-sun conjunction, which is what the new moon is. And the moon's also starting to get, the full moons are going to be inching closer to the sun's elliptical, so the conjunction gets closer on that, and then that'll lead into eclipse season. I guess that'll be in September, actually. But anyway, so the moon is enhancing the energy. So there's more astrology for sure, but there's a brief overview for you of how numerology and astrology set the table for major teardowns and rebuilds. Also, Mars in Virgo all month seeks healing. So there's a lot of healing energy also, and a lot of common sense reasoning. So the Mars in Virgo aspect, because Mars is energy and action in Virgo, tends to lean more towards common sense, diplomacy, working through conflicts rather than creating new conflicts. So we have, on one hand, these forces that are working towards solutions, and another one that's really working towards aggression, and seeing how that all plays out is going to be interesting, basically. So that's that. So moving right along. So July. So firstly, I had one of the most stark visions that I had was an image of people in hazmat suits, basically, and they were searching through rubbles. And I'll get more into the meaning of that, but just briefly, this could be like a major bombing, even some kind of a nuclear event that's going on. And I really was feeling more around like Israel, that area, but it could be anywhere in that area. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And I'm going to lead into Trump in a second, but we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with Iran and Israel a little bit also. And I asked Spirit about the Iran-Israeli conflict, basically, and they show me a cross inside of a circle, like a plus sign, and that's a symbol of the earth, basically. So yeah, we know it's geopolitical, and there may be some, obviously, war is profitable and is used to push agendas and everything, but that's the earth symbol. So that was interesting that symbol came up. And the 4 quadrant, they showed me basically 4 different political systems or ideologies on the world, in the world, precipitating this and other global conflicts, so that fundamentally there's a division or a duality in our society. We see that in the United States, where I live, but that each side is further, subdivided into 2 sides also. So within the divide, there's subdivisions also. This is all by design, and the war is being driven from within the system that vies for greater control over humanity. So they use fear, distraction, and invoke hatred and the specter of a World War III to maintain rigid control in the end. But in the end, all sides are corrupt, and really understand that, basically. It's exactly peace to the Middle East. Lots of prayers and peace to the Middle East. Exactly. So what we see in the news is largely planned to drive the agenda, to direct attention in certain areas while other agendas are being fulfilled. They're like smoke screens in a way, to create further chaos, fear, and anger, then clamp down more control. Then people continue to fight one another and perpetuate further chaos rather than overcoming a greater enemy. So part of our missions in this matrix or Maya depending on your perspective, the illusion that we're living in, is to remember who we are and to reconnect with our own divinity, which the forces that be try to take away so that we're more easy to control, which is what they try to do. Block us as they will make us as connecting with our own divinity makes us stronger, more sovereign once again, and more united once again. So your divine mission is to reconnect. Remember, to build the frequencies of the heart and to raise your vibration, to connect with higher consciousness. And remember, the heart is the unifying field. Hearts cannot be programmed. So if everybody does that, the wars will get solved, basically, because we're part of a collective field. So the more people that raise their consciousness and vibrate in gratitude, compassion of the heart, and then when the heart's vibrating at the proper frequency, the brain and the heart come into coherence. We talk a lot about that here on the channel. And then our ideas or our plans of action come more from spirit rather than from fear. So in other words, what we do action-wise to help the planet becomes more from spirit rather than from, more from the solution rather than from the problem, which is fear, division, or whatever. I'll have a little bit more of that on my notes. So anyway, remember, timelines are fluid, always changing, and I can only pick up on the energy of the now and receive predictions and visions for the future. So we mentioned that a little bit early on. So more on Iran in a moment. And what about Trump? I just wanted to mention that that Trump has a real opportunity right now to really gain favors in the world community, depending on how he handles the diplomacy. Basically, we know that a lot of things are staged. A lot of things are they're pre-planned and they're staged or whatever. But the first thing I see is one or more world leaders stepping down in July or the summer. Now, Starmer's names come up a few times. When the prime ministers of England, Trump, I think Putin, but maybe later on. For Trump, presidency is in jeopardy. I have to say that. Now, you can just look at the world and know that. You don't need a psychic to tell you that, right? And the end could begin in July. I'm going to say could be. So people that support Donald Trump, don't freak out, because there's more to happen. And there's still multiple timelines associated with that. If you've been following my channel, remember my original prediction was he'd be in office about 2.5 years, whatever the mission is, which may not be his mission. It may be more of a divine mission. We get solved or whatever. But there's real concerns in the shorter term. So Trump presidency jeopardy, the end could be in July with a possible step down within 90 days of now. And this is shown clearly in this timeline, but Trump can save his presidency. And if Trump plays his cards in the global conflict, he could gain more appeal and divert dismissal based on disapproval, bipartisan pressure, international pressure against him, and stuff like that. So remember, as a collective, we created Donald Trump, not to take this the wrong way, but as a symbolic, as something symbolic. Like the Native American legend of the coyote, the trickster, the one that tricks us into learning and growth. Apparently, we needed this figure to stir things up and stir up the chaos in order for us to change our path and our trajectory for our evolution. I don't know if that makes sense to all of you guys, but hang in there. I'll try to describe this a little bit more. But we basically needed a figure to embody the problems, like to be the personification of a lot of what's wrong in the world, basically, in order that we can see that and find solutions, basically, or seek different solutions. So I'm very sorry for those that suffer in the process, but this is bigger. So we're needing a catalyst. We're needing something or someone to tear things down in order that we can see more clearly the trajectory humanity's in, so that we can change that trajectory, so that we can solve a lot of the global problems, basically. So whether you love or hate Trump, I support you just the same, just to be clear about that. But acceptance is the key to change, and a lot of people are having a hard time accepting this presidency try to let that go. You don't have to love it. You can still protest. You let your voice be heard, but acceptance is really key. Especially if you'd like to see him removed or worse. And we're not going to condone that line of thinking, by the way, but especially his prominence on the world stage is what is going to lead to exposure and change, basically. Whether he embodies the corruption, like a lot of you I know believe that he's so corrupt, he's just embodying it, and that's how it's getting exposed. Or if he's on a mission to expose the corruption, and not just the Democrats, but global corruption. It runs on both party lines, we'll put it that way, and it has for a long time. Um, or whether he's on a mission to expose the cabal. This is the mission. For it to complete, we need to relax, stay in high vibes, so that any action we take lead to high vibe solutions rather than acting based on fear and anger, which is invoked, is programmed into us, which just supports those energies and perpetuates the problem. So in other words, if you're angry or upset, or even if you're not, you probably wonder, what action should I be taking right now? What should I be doing in order to help the world? But if you're in fear and anger, you're really only drawing on those energies. So what solutions or what action do you decide will support those energies? And that's the problem. That's what's creating all the chaos. But if you go into the heart, if you accept and you understand there's a higher purpose and a higher timeline, and really connect with your higher self, spirit, source, or God, and when you're there, ask, what can I do? Then those actions will come from spirit and will support the solution, not the problem. Hopefully that makes sense. I've said this in other live streams and others. Hello from Michigan. Just a quick check. Very good. All right. So basically, so there's also conjecture that I wrote DT in my notes. That's Trump may be part of the globalist movement, um, as the big beautiful bill and Stargate suggest, or he may have been appointed to be the president because those in charge and control know they can stir up chaos, distract the masses, deepen the divide. But either way, and this is important, Donald Trump, as you know, cannot be controlled. So whatever the reason, is he just playing the game? Because from what I'm seeing, just as a casual observer, things that are in that bill, things that are part of the Stargate project, are really, support like the 2025 agenda and the globalist movement. There's also conjecture that maybe this is another cabal, like a different one leadership hating the other. I think at the end of the day, he's pretty much his own man, to be quite honest. But understand also what we call the cabal, the globalists, the deep state. They control all the money. And you think about Donald Trump, Elon Musk, two of the richest people in the world. It's literally impossible that they don't have any ties with the globalist movement. Whether they become rebels and fight that, that's a possibility. But just to keep that in mind. So it's not just Donald Trump, but the forces behind him, and could be one control system trying to displace another, or simply part of the globalist plan. This could lead to an assassination attempt. I think we're ascending to the point that it won't happen, but it's been on my radar for a lot of months now, and I did successfully predict the first one. So it's been on my radar, and and that would be blamed on terrorists or fanatics or not, but it would definitely be an inside job. So, in my way of thinking, there could be a plan that Donald Trump gets the ball rolling, but those in charge, the globalists or whatever, really want Vance or somebody else. Oh God, what's the Speaker of the House's name? Is that O'Neill or? Well, yeah, that would be the next in line. If both Trump and Vance were removed, basically. So so that there's that possibility that they really wanted Vance or somebody else to carry their agendas through. Get Trump in for a while, stir things up, get the ball rolling, and he is out there doing what he's doing, and from the outside looking in, of course, we only have legacy media and other alternative sites to go on, but there's work being done apparently in the areas of of diplomacy. And yeah, with the the Virgo energy I was explaining before, there's a lot of that energy that supports diplomacy. It's almost like both things are kind of clashing in a way, like escalation of conflict versus finding peaceful solutions. So anyway, just saying why there could be another assassination attempt that may, again, be shown as a something else, but it's really an inside job. Also, but so like I was saying before, if he plays his cards right, he could prove me wrong in my conjecture that he may get removed in July, into early September. But the wild card is his health, and we know that he's not healthy. And if that's an issue, nothing that he does could change that unless he gets a lot healthier soon. And I think there's a medical procedure done secretly. Remember, there was like 2 to 3 days where people didn't know where he was or what he was doing. Then he reemerged. I think there's a medical thing that was being done that we're not supposed to know about. And I predicted that before, and I think that's going to come up again in July. Also, there could be pushbacks and attempts to cause him to step down, though I don't think through impeachment, because I think even if he does get impeached, I think that they know they're not going to get a 2/3 House majority to get that. So the main reason he might not make it through the summer are things that happen behind the show, not following through on certain globalist agreements or stuff like that. So definitely, keep that in mind. Oh, thank you for reminding us to hit the like button. Yeah, that really helps to get this information out to more people. And thank you, everybody. Wow, we have almost 180 on. So thank you guys for coming on live and doing this with us. So anyway, so where are we? So also, I had a vision of Trump in a courtroom, and there may be a hearing addressing some allegation. I honestly don't know what it is. It's just a vision that came in a courtroom having a hearing, and I don't know if it's. I think it's more national, but it could be international. So there may be something that comes up that he has to defend something or do something in illegal. I don't think it relates to the 34 felony counts or whatever that he's been accused of. So it's not alleged he's been accused of that. It's all a show. A lot of games of Emperor's Clothes. Complete lunacy has been normalized, and people just accept that this is normal when it's really not. Like even 15 years ago, it would be like, is this America? Is this the president? And that kind of a thing. So emperor's clothes. We have to just point and say the emperor has no clothes, and then we'll learn a lot basically. But point that I'm making on one point is like I cannot get a job at Walmart with one active felony, and yet there's some loophole in the Constitution that a convicted felon can run for president if he gets the votes. Basically, I'm not going to talk about voter interference or those things. I have another video where I dove into that. It'll be on the end screen. When it usually takes about 12 hours for this to upload to video, and then I can add the end screen. But I dove into that specter a lot in another video, and there's a lot more to cover in this one. But yeah, I don't think there's been a non-tampered election here in the States for quite a while, probably since 2000 or even earlier, to be honest. So yeah. So I'm not gonna pour too much energy into that. So anyway, so that was in the report. I see a lot of witch hunts, so I see that increasing over this time. And not necessarily against Trump, but in general, I see like AI being used to launch smear campaigns to weaken certain public figures to drive agendas and sort of something like that. So look for a lot of dirty pool and dirty politics with the AI technology and other things to start to surface. Also, we have to talk a little bit about the global conflicts, the climate, the economy, huge global events, global politics to get into. So there's more to come, and yeah, we will be talking a little bit more about Trump here and now. When will the U.S. fiat dollar collapse, Michael? You know, I don't have that in my notes, although they're saying 2026 is a good bet, but I think we start to see more of that later in the year. And I have a little bit on that later on in my notes. So anyway, so back to the conflict. Not sure where where but people, yeah, I was talking about the hazmat suits, searching through rubble, felt a little bit like Middle Easter. That could be major bombing. Now you'll recall that I made predictions, for a few months in a row about explosion around the nuclear sites. Could be like a nuclear leak or something like that. We also talked about bombs being dropped in the U.S. Getting pulled into the conflict, and guess what happened? After Israel, now the U.S. bombed 3 alleged nuclear sites in Iran, basically. So that totally verified, and this could be another bomb or explosion in a similar area. Though I think the higher forces would work on blocking it, and that's a good point to remember that we are being guided. Whether it's through God, spirit, or source, extraterrestrials. They're not allowed to interfere because it's our evolution and our growth. But a lot of things that could go very, very wrong do get we'll say influenced by higher forces. Like they're not going to let us blow up the earth. Basically, it's too precious a planet. There's a reason why all of a sudden when the first nuclear bomb detonated, and what was that? Yeah, it was 44, was it, or 45? All of a sudden, like later in that decade, everybody was seeing UFOs or whatever. We got their attention by that, basically. A nuclear detonation has a ripple effect through the entire planet. It infects the entire global crust of the earth. It sends a ripple through the entire world. It sends like a radiation belt. It's a big plasma release, basically, that can produce auroras also, just like the northern lights when the sun releases its plasma. A nuclear explosion is a huge deal, even a small one. People were going to the desert with their glasses to watch the nuclear explosion in the 1950s, like OMG. But anyway, this could be another bomb or explosion in a similar area. Okay, they'll probably not. I can't even read my writing. So maybe I'm not supposed to read that, right? Moving right along. So I do see tense ceasefires continuing in Iran, but some breaches, like especially early in the month, sneaky attacks, terrorist attacks, cyber attacks, big, big, big. It could be between early in the month approaching the full moon, then it goes back into effect after the full moon. So, I don't know if it'll hold. And truth be told, I tend to talk a lot about what I hit on in my past predictions because, on one hand, I want you guys to know that I know what I'm talking about, that I get it from spirit. On another hand, psychics like to be right. But I'll talk about when I miss things also, to be fair. It's not all hit. The ceasefire between Iran and Israel, something I did not pick up on or see coming, which makes me feel like it may be very tentative or may dissolve, but hopefully not. But I think there's going to be breaches with that. Cyber attacks increase. Now we warned you in June about a big cyber attack, right? And what happened? What was it? Google or Apple? A lot of passwords got compromised. And a big one stealing password. I think later in the month it could be Russia, Ukraine ceasefire on the table, as I predicted. Even before 2025 began. I'm seeing more than I'm seeing more than one emergency government meeting, possibly over global threats. UN emergency meeting and see a country possibly pulling out of NATO, and watch Germany. There's a lot of strife that's likely to build up in Germany or instability around that. It just feels like something big's about to happen soon, just generally speaking. And this may be days within this forecast that something really big happens around the world. There's a series of things. A lot of fear could involve Russia also. And there's just no way I'm going to get all of everything out there in this time, but there's a lot that I'm going to miss that's going to happen also. And I'm hoping to give you the flavor to help you, prepare. And at the end of the day, this is really about it's really about awakening our senses. A massive protest, big U.S. anti-war ones, big ones in China, huge uprising in China, also Europe and Canada. Canada's likely to see some more division, likely to stay out of the global conflicts, right? But and lean towards greater independence. With pressures against OPEC nations, we see gas prices probably increase, especially with the fears of that possibility. I think it's already started. An opening for new negotiations between U.S. and Canada, which could release some of the tariffs. The biggest peace protest ever. I think Donald Trump, the big beautiful bill, as it's being called, or the one big beautiful bill, will need one change or omission to pass, and it will be close. It may need more time. I feel like it may get held up in Congress for a time also. More government scandals exposed, possibly with the USAID, Doge, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, to name a few. Big month of global, um, big month of global exposures, basically visions of Gates being weak and scared. So there may be a lot of heat on Bill Gates. Fauci indictments in other countries. He can't be indicted here. So in general, this is the 16th tower energy, creating further destabilization of governments, mass protests globally, talks of revolution, and record period of natural and geological and weather related events. This is all really coming together in July. Trump seeks alliances with other countries to know where he stands in some of the global markets or global, not markets, governments, and for strategies and moving forward and things like that. There's a lot of sabotage, a lot of under radar attacks still happening during ceasefire. The date July 8th came in my mind, and around then could be the end of some cooperative or ceasefire, but then resume shortly after, and stuff like that. So I know there's something I wanted to say, and I'm forgetting what it is. Maybe I have it later in my notes, but it relates to what I'm talking about here. So I see, a lot of you. I'm seeing, in the same, line. One says I don't agree with Trump, and one says I think he's doing a great job. So that's good, as long as we keep it nice and friendly, don't attack. Debate is a positive thing because it makes us more intelligent, and we should be open to the other side, the other viewpoint, even if we don't agree with it, right? So Trump's these lines, sabotage. All right. So what else? So it's shown another bigger explosion. This could be the Pentagon, but I got a vision of underground in New York City, and I really feel like I'm around 42nd Street. So we'll see if that actually comes out to the letter. And sometimes I'll pick up on things, but it gets prevented. Like those that are supposed to be on top of these things to prevent acts of terrorism and mass destruction, you discover it before it even happens, and you guys will think that I'm wrong, and be like, all right, I'm happy to be wrong if there's no explosions in New York City. That's my hometown. Those are my homies there. We don't want anybody to get hurt, right? Also, the old World Trade Center site, what's it called? The Freedom Towers now. Statue of Liberty. We had those visions of Statue of Liberty back in the day. I thought maybe, because I've seen a lot of helicopters, and maybe I was picking up on the helicopter that circled the Statue of Liberty and that went down in the southern Hudson. And was that April or May? Terrorist attack anywhere, but major coastal cities. New York, of course, is on that. Of course, more plane crashes, unfortunately. I started to talk about that just before the first major plane crash, and then there's a whole slew of others. I think that there may be some kind of drone incidents around the West Coast or LA. LA's still on the hot seat, and again, another good prediction was we talked about major protests. We talked about the National Guard coming into some area or city very near the southern border, and of course, LA is only 3 hours from Tijuana, so that'll verify too. Also, a lot of recalls possible from everything from auto parts to food. I'm seeing meat or cattle feed or something like that, which increases prices. Important figure dies in September, monarch. That could be King Charles, though I don't want to say dies, because I don't know that. Only God knows who's going to die, right? So cancel, delete. We don't wish that on anyone, but I think there's things that have to be watched out there. Basically, I want to say big power outages shown in New York City. Actually, I didn't pick up on that until the other day. New York City area, the Northeast corridor, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, also the Southwest. Because I've seen darkness in from the desert into Mexico. but it could be anywhere. What could cause that? Solar flares, wars, attacks, do direct energy weapons attacks, creating fires, um, massive cyber attacks can cause that. And I think that there are going to be at least attempted cyber attacks against the power grids. Not here, but in other countries. That's why the majority of wars fought on the cyber battlefield, basically. And so the U.S. and other countries have the top cybersecurity agents that are working, nonstop to try to prevent that, basically. Also, so big power outage. South, another one in Europe. Okay, Russia, Ukraine, active. What did I say? Can't be my right after 22nd. Not sure what that is. I wish I could read my own writing. Right, that would help. But anyway, a lot of activity there. I mean, I was talking about the possibility of a ceasefire, but that that's what I wrote, ceasefire. We already talked about. Trump can save his presidency now, depending on how he handles negotiating. We talked about that already. Okay, and getting back to a point I wanted to make earlier, again, it's all a show, and things that go on behind the scenes are different than what we see on the world stage. And the media really tries to direct our attention in one way, and then things happen in other directions, basically. So war and diplomacy can all be part of the show. Um, and gauge how it affects the media, how attention is being directed, and stuff like that. So then I predicted explosion of nuclear bombs. We talked about that. Youth involvement in Israel conflict. Netanyahu losing some support. Could be another major bombing in general. Things escalate. Global conflicts, but there's an energy diplomacy that as well. I know I'm being a little bit repetitive, but that's okay. Um, Assassinations around the world, not just here, exposure of corruption. We talked about that in June, and then people in Minnesota were assassinated, basically. So unfortunately, that continues. A lot of it against the whistleblowers also. Possible explosion around New York City, DC Pentagon, Statue of Liberty, all right, terrorists, possible bombings, a lot around the borders. So yeah, so this is all repeat. So anyway, so we're going to segue into scams and other global things. I know this is somewhere in my notes, but I had a vision about world leaders meeting in Eastern Europe. I explained this in another video that was before I even knew about the NATO summits that just happened. Honestly, I don't read a lot of news, especially before my forecast, because I don't want to know what's going on. I want this to be purely from spirit. So if you say I don't know a lot about what's going on in the world, it's true. I'm getting this from spirit, basically. But little bit of water. I need to slow down a bit. Gosh, I think forces that B don't want me to talk about this because I keep forgetting this point. I probably in my notes later on, but okay, I'm back with you. I'm present again. So in this vision that was in another video recently, they showed heads of state meet. It could be Trump, other leaders that are supposed to be enemies, but they're getting along. Then there's generals, top military people, but they're strategizing war. They're not strategizing peace, from what I was seeing. And then I don't know what happened at the NATO summit. Apparently, there was a lot of, I don't know if it was groundbreaking, but there's movements towards peace in the recent NATO summits. And I think, Trump was viewed very favorably in those exchanges. Again, we're talking about legacy news, so who knows for sure. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that are orchestrated to drive the agendas moving into the future. And the agendas will always be to leverage more control, to have more money in their pockets, or to the minute few, to keep it out of our hands, basically, so we're more easy to control also. So you follow the money, follow the power, and try to look away from where the mainstream news is trying to point your attention and be aware of everything going on, and you might pick up on things that are going on behind the scenes. So anyway, segueing into scams and other global politics, scams at an all-time high, sophisticated AI scams, major security breaches ahead, major protests, especially in early July, internet blackouts. Blackouts could affect around New York City. And these are just potential. Let's raise our vibration and frequency to mitigate some of these things. Also, around Southwest U.S., but anywhere, blackouts already talked about. They're continuing to see air disasters, planes grounded, lots of delays in traveling, mostly safe. Now we are coming to a Mercury retrograde, so that's more common around the retrogrades. But you know, plan on the potential for delays if you're traveling in July. Basically, major changes in Africa. I don't talk a lot about Africa too. Changes in governments, currencies, lands being occupied by foreign invaders, ambassadors speaking out against outside entities, maybe the U.S. also, claiming that they're not really helping, but they're destabilizing the government and the agreements between other African nations, basically. So there may be like a globalist agenda to further destabilize Africa, and why there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of minerals there, and that's usually a motivation to take over countries, whether it's oil, diamonds, whatever it is. So I'm seeing like a lot of activity and changing of borders in countries and stuff like that. Also, there may be more big discoveries in Africa, like we found in Egypt, like under the pyramids. Also, big diamond mine or rare mineral mines discovered that may precipitate more activity in Africa. Vision of people covered in mud and homeless, suggesting a big flood or invasion, more likely weather event. And then they popped around India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, that area. Could be a very bad monsoon season in that area. Could be discoveries of off-grid indigenous people, especially in South America, that are either scantily known or not even known at all. An essay, tighter border controls, new conflict around changes occurring in some countries. England, Great Britain, there could be females speaking out against King Charles or the administration. Sarah Ferguson came right to mind again. I don't follow the royal family, so I don't get a lot of predictions around that. But of course, watch his health, the king's health, especially around September. Also, Antarctica's highlight. And I've been talking about that for a couple of months now. Discoveries under the glacier, possible earthquake could cause a nice slide. I don't think it's happening in July, and usually that would happen during Antarctic summer, not Antarctic winter anyway. But an earthquake, an ice slide into the ocean could create a tsunami that affects every coast on the planet, basically. Ruins discovered, possibly UFOs and ruins like that discovered. Civilization remnants discovered under the ice. They're able to see more under the glaciers now with their technology, and they're going to find more signs that once Antarctica was warm and people lived there and thrived there. Huge reservoirs of gold and precious metals discovered in Antarctica. What does that mean? It's going to be mined? I hope not, but some of this may have already happened, and if so, I apologize. Like I said, I don't read a lot of news, I want to say. Also in Canada, there's shown more pushback against Carney, more divide, or did I say that already? But I think Canada remains more sovereign and more unified than most countries, basically, and tries to really stay out of things as much as possible. And international abductions, assassination. Watch the Clintons also. I talked about this in the last video. More Bill than Hillary. So there may be some news. Again, it's going to be a lot of exposure of misdeeds, corruption in the government, in the corporations, in the way things are handled, pandemics, how pandemics are handled, who was in charge, who, misled the people and created these rules that you can't talk about certain things, and you be accused of medical misinformation when it turns out, as more information comes on, it's probably accurate, stuff like that. But it could go in a lot of different areas. Remember, this is the tower where the old facade of a world we once knew that's corrupt and built on the weak foundation of corruption that only the older support has to crumble as these new frequencies hit the planet Earth and create it dislodges the old, and then we have all the conflict. But then things fall, and then new structures in society get built that are more based on unity and shared power amongst people, not just a centralized government. That's what we're moving towards in the world right now, where it's a globalist ruled country, world. You're still having the countries, so this would be more going back to more the ideals of government, but they're still ruling. They're still borders, but they're much softer. It's almost like I have a future vision, it's years off, that like the different nations are almost like the states here in the USA, that different states have somewhat different rules, different customs or whatever, but they're all part of a global network. They're not so separate, they're not so divided, basically. So heads of state in general, meetings, or this is where I wrote it down. It's more planning, about the heads of state. It's probably secret. It's probably not the NATO, although the NATO meetings could be what I was seeing in a vision. Could have happened before that. I was also seeing a lot of children being rescued in a couple of different places. Israel and Palestine may be part of that, and could indicate some movement towards discovering more about the Epstein files, if they really truly exist. I mean, it's really the client list or whatever. I was seeing September as more of an exposure of that, to be quite honest, but we may get some news on that, and whether or not we get a full exposure of that, I think probably not, to be honest. I think even though I know a lot's being exposed, the old's falling, so that we can build on stronger foundations, I think some things that have gone on will remain under wraps. I don't think we're going to get a full disclosure of all the I mean, for some people, yeah, but I think so many people still be in denial. I'll put it that way. So anyway, could indicate some movement. All right. So in general, big month of exposures, of scandals, corruptions as the tower falls. Some unexpected, even shocking things happen that I may not be picking up on directly here. So just prepare for a shocking month of expect the unexpected, and things ramp up. But again, it's part of the awakening. That may not be easy. Could we have to make adjustments, and we may get out of our routines for a while? Again, have plenty of food supplies if there's a long-term power outage or communications go down in your area. So be prepared. Then you don't have to be scared because you have a plan, basically. So mounting pressures and changes against UF tariffs. I've seen this image of money circling the U.S. I think a lot of countries are going to get together to try to work with our country to maybe make the tariffs more fair for world trade to happen. I feel like Trump's aware of it, and a lot of the tariffs were for leverage, and they even told you that even before they got enacted, and even before like when there's a 135% tariff threatening to be leveled against China, that I said, Spear, show me the number 40. It's going to be amended. It got lowered to 30%, but then there's a 10% going the other way. So that's for the 40. So anyway, oil prices rise. It's interesting because in a recent forecast, I saw a sharp decline in oil prices. I'm contradicting myself a little bit. Maybe they'll go down and up. Maybe both will happen. But, again, with I think possible embargoes from OPEC nations. There's a lot going on in the Middle East, a lot of struggles, a lot of strife. And whenever there's war looming, oil prices are going to go up because and a lot of things go up because there's concerns about shortages. So we could be looking over $4, even $5 here by the end of the month. I think again, I'll put it this way. I'm not super confident about that prediction. I'm only feeling potential. Maybe there's a lot of loose ends or a lot of free will, or things that have to be sorted out, basically. But as I'm talking, I feel like Spirit saying, they know what's going on, and there's certain powers that want to drive up the price of oil for their reasons, basically. So if that's the case, it'll happen. So be prepared. Like I was saying, I see more collaboration with Canada. So I think Donald Trump is doing his due diligence, and what happens if we don't get oil from here? We don't have enough in the U.S., even though he's expanding drilling. So making nice with Canada. Like I said, I think Canada is a very proud nation. I think they band together to suppress any U.S. suppression. I wouldn't call it threats, maybe promises of them becoming a united, a state basically. And even though it appears that like relations have crumbled, I don't think it has fully. I think that there's still an alignment with Canada, and like I said, I think the tariffs are really to leverage things, and that they're often bluffs that were never meant to go. At least some do, some don't. I'll put it that way. So I don't see Canada supporting war efforts or getting involved, but leaning more towards U.S. support, in the war efforts, but not active support. Major world leaders steps down 2 or 3 before September, and in U.S. very revolutionary. National Guard can get called on again in different conflicts and protests and stuff like that. Could be in D.C. big protests. I mean, you'd expect that, right? States threaten to secede, but don't think it'll actually happen, especially along the West Coast. So you may hear news of that, of almost like a civil war, like we don't want to be part of this country anymore. But I don't think it's going to get to that point. Um, so bank closures and their mergers. So, a lot of changes with Federal Reserves or stuff like that are likely. Water wars can break out in different nations. Since we're moving more into the economy, gold and silver continue to climb, right? So it's been, what, 3 years, 2, 3 years? I'm telling you guys, get in gold, get in silver. It's not too late to get in silver. I mean, gold is pretty expensive now. I mean, it's probably going to go up further, but it's definitely not too late to get into silver. I've been hearing news on silver shortages, which will also drive the prices up. But again, we've been telling you for a good while on this channel, I'm not an expert in the economy. This is what Spirit's saying. And I think that there's a certain amount of common sense behind that. So I like to combine intuition with science and common sense, to be honest. So I think that's going to continue to rise. Not too late. Watch out for crypto stands. Beware of the newer cryptos. Basically, you go with the tried and true. Stock market very volatile, but could rally later in the month, early or mid. There could be a good time to invest, because I think it's going to go down, but it'll be up and down, and it's hard to predict because a lot of this is going to depend on how deep the war goes, and that's still a fluid situation. But from what I'm seeing, I think the first part, especially around the 10th, we could see a significant dip in some stocks and securities, and the crypto markets and alternative markets also. But I think that there's going to be some rebounding, especially in August. And the savvy investors can really do well with that, basically. So we're seeing new currencies, centralized digital currencies. And probably more likely after July. Talks of coming recession. That they may be predicting later in the year, so that can level off the housing prices, drop the interest rates and stuff like that. Could be stimulus packages discussed, IRS changes discussed, and of course there's shifts in the IRS that would mean that Donald Trump probably doesn't get removed in the summertime, because for at least his campaign promises that he wants to, if not completely do away with the IRS, change it basically. Talk of introducing the gold standards, particularly to monitor digital currencies as a step towards Jasara or Nasara. I don't think that's going to happen full on for a long time, but that could be amending the change rate. So that's kind of what Michael, you were asking about earlier, right? And thank you. You can check out Michael's comments. I don't want to flash comments because we've been on over an hour, and I still got a little bit more to get to here. We have to talk about climate and weather and technology and the earth and stuff like that. So, and I know I'm missing a few things, but yeah, certainly, doing away with the fiat dollar. That's what you're saying. That's what getting it back on a precious metal standard basically means. And I think, yeah, in order to regulate the cryptos, I think that's going to be a step also. I do believe that's part of the quantum financial system. But again, I'm not an expert. If you guys know more than me, please comment that. I want to say, so you get the idea, you get the gist. No, the economy, world economy, is not going to just tank and crash and burn. I don't see that. I stopped using the word crash, probably even before 2025, and called it a reset. And yeah, there may be mini crashes, basically, but This is right now. I may get more information later on, and I may change things as more information comes. But I don't think we're looking at a major depression. But yeah, a recession is on the table. So anyway, um, so I missed this right earlier. So I'm seeing drone attacks around LA or other areas, fire set. You have there is clearings of land and creating smart cities that involve higher level AI and technology, more levels of control and stuff like that. So bad summer for fires in general. Also major flooding. They've shown me a lot of water. They've shown me a desert region getting flooded. Wouldn't be surprised if that's like Las Vegas or that area. There could be something in the Northeast. New York State are seeing, my area is seeing basically like roadways having mud and water flowing over it. So, there could be some major rain events right here in other areas. It's a big month for that, and weather extremes in general. Yeah, there's more in the mist. Mm, more likely. So July weather hot. Yeah, we talked about this being the summer of hot already. We talked about, remember in the beginning of June, we talked about snow in June in the Northeast and the mountaintops, but also in the northern Rockies. And my God, Montana had a ton of snow. I saw some of the pictures out there, and like right around the summer solstice. So and yeah, we talked about, in detail. I have another video where I dive deeper into the weather this summer. So I'm just gonna go over a few things here, but in that video, we talked about the Northeast, the northern tier, and even into the central, having a lot of June versions of Arctic outbreaks, a lot of wet, unsettled weather here in the Northeast, going to the northern tier and areas like that. But with periods of sunny and hot weather, and I don't know which video it was. It might have been the June forecast or the weather one. I'm not sure which one. I even talked about about it reaching 100 in my neck of the woods around June 25th, basically. And then I was the 23rd and 24th. It reached 102 in Poughkeepsie, and that was the first time it was 2011. So how many? First time in 14 years there's triple digits in Poughkeepsie, New York. So, and I think in around mid-July, second to third week of July, we could have another very similar and bad heat wave. So hang in there. But as I predicted back in June, I see like the first week of July could be a little bit more unsettled, like today is. It's like in the 60s and cloudy and rainy all day after it was near 100. So yeah, we could see another one of those, maybe not as chilly, into the first week of July. But then I think we go into like another hot regime after that. So July weather hot, okay. Talked about chilly doing all right. I talked about that now. Northeast first week, chilly, especially southeast. Okay, I'm still with you. Like that. And otherwise hot, especially the southeast into the southern plains. So watch that area. The desert southwest, always hot there, right? But then maybe a little bit more of an active monsoon season there, so it may not be quite as bad. In general, a lot of record weather records being broken. And like I said, I did a whole long video on that. You can check that out. Now, one thing, I had a vision of like a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs. There's a vision I had earlier on. And what I've been seeing, in May and June are more ticks than I've ever seen in this area. More mosquitoes, the poison ivy, more poison ivy than ever, and the lack of bees. And I think this is symbolic that the earth is out of balance. We know that. And I think it's being shown in nature by more aggressive species, basically. And the earth is going to give a sign, because the earth's our mother. The earth does not want her children to be harmed. So we're being warned that the earth is going to need to counterbalance, and that's going to include things like earthquakes, volcanoes, inclement or very rough weather, a lot of winds in a lot of different areas. So big tornadoes, probably big derechos. July's derecho season here in the U.S., especially the northern to central part. So big floods, a lot of water, a lot of wind being shown, basically. And with these more aggressive species, I think it's warning us that the Earth is going to have to counterbalance, and just we need to be prepared. If you're prepared, you don't have to be scared, basically, and that's the bottom line. There's always going to be natural disasters. We're just in a period where they're more frequent and they tend to be stronger than they have been. And I think the Earth is really, starting July, this may be a focal. We've talked a lot about earthquakes. We've done separate videos and separate fault lines here in the channel. Another interesting thing that came up is there may be a new comet or new asteroid discovered. When I was doing my notes, I just got that vision quickly. Solar activity remains high. Could be an event in early July. Mid-July also looks conducive. This would be the coronal hole. There's a coronal hole pulling out. So we've been in a geomagnetic, maybe not a storm, but a rise. So the solar winds have been stronger lately. And when there's more stronger winds, it's like a magnetic flux that forms. It's more of an ion stream that happened, or a plasma stream. But it also pulls plasma from the Earth because it's a coronal hole, which basically means the sun's plasma is less, or the corona of the sun is plasma because it's so darn hot, hotter than the surface of the sun, that nothing can exist as an element. It can only exist in plasma. So it draws plasma from the Earth. It creates more instability in the Earth. And there's another coronal hole that's going to rotate in a few days also. That also coronal mass ejection flares destabilize the Earth, and they trigger more earthquakes and volcanoes. So there's signs as well as visions that support this is going to be a very active month. Just like I said with June, guess what? June's been a very active month there also. So watch out, Japan, Philippines, East China for earthquake, tsunami, maybe a mega quake. There's been a lot of prophecies. The date July 5th. I don't know if it's going to be exactly July 5th, but that's very vulnerable. So that area around Japan, Eastern China, the Philippines, maybe trending into the northern coast of Indonesia, those areas, and then the islands like Guam going east of there, they have to be aware of at least the potential of a tsunami. I want to say, and these are just potentials. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. Not all of them are going to happen. They're all potentials, but I'm pretty sure one or two of them will happen. Basically, so watch out, Japan. Also, the Cascadia Fault. I think that's a little bit later on. I mean, still keep an eye on it in July, but that fault line may hold off for a little while. I think in Southern California there could be another pretty big shake. Also, I want to say. But the other thing that's really important here is that I got this vision of a crack right down the middle of the U.S. It was a jagged crack. In my mind, it coincides with the Mississippi. So the new Madrid fault is very suspect for an eruption right now. And again, just be aware of it. Great Spirit, the Earth herself, the extraterrestrials, if you believe in them, interdimensionals, are working with the Earth so that it's not as bad as it could be, but it still could be an issue. And if it happens full on, like in Baba Vanga's prediction, she predicted that in Mississippi it would cause like the continent to split in 2020. I think he even said July, but it's been a long time since I viewed her prophecies. So again, prophecies, sometimes they're warnings. They don't always happen. They're just letting us know if we continue the way we're going, this is going to happen. So what do? We change our energy on a personal level. That helps to feed the collective, and then that changes some of the prophecies. Not all of the things that Nostradamus have come true yet. A lot have, or Edgar Cayce, or even Revelations, or all that. But a lot of it has. So California, Middle East earthquake, possibly Iran. That would be interesting. But they showed me that here's Iran, Iraq could be a big earthquake there. Lots of volcanoes, at least one major eruption globally. Italy, we talked about Italy before the big eruption and it happened. West Yellowstone probably later, but keep an eye. There's been strange animal behavior. There's been a lot of fissures opening, so it's getting active in that area. In fact, the whole geological plate is getting very active across the entire globe. That's going to hit the Ring of Fire in the Pacific more than other areas, but there's other active hotspots as well. Basically, I'm trying to keep somewhat of an eye on your comments. So particularly Italy, Indonesia. We talked about Indonesia, and I think within days, again, that there's a major eruption there. So, and there's some that came that I didn't predict. So it's not like I'm going to pick up on every single little thing. That's literally impossible for anybody, but you get the idea. What other areas? Well, certainly, keep an eye on the Pacific Northwest also, around Mount St. Helen, and that area, Rainier and stuff like that. Of course, Hawaii, we talked about Kilauea, and then the major eruption happened. I'd say for people on Hawaii Island, also to keep an eye out for activity on Mauna Loa also, because if that erupted, that's a much faster lava flow that you'd only have, hours to respond if that happens. So I feel experiencing it, not yet, but keep an eye on it, basically. And largely the Kilauea eruptions contained anyway. So like you said, there's other parts of the world that are. Oh, Antarctica, yeah. We talked about that earlier. I think, interesting. I think it's the next part's in my notes, but I think around like South Africa and that area could have a geological event also. So yeah, a lot of places in the world, and still keep an eye on the Mediterranean, that area, also the Caribbean. So there's been a lot of minor quakes in that area. So again, it's all getting very active. There's more movement of magma. There's more movement in the Earth. It responds to all the solar energy. We're in the solar maximum, and the planets have been lining up in a way that enhances that the energy to the Earth. So it's all there basically. So what else? Back into my notes. The new moon focuses more on the world politics. All right. Oh. Particularly around the full moon. Yeah, that's at 18 degrees Mars. That's 18 degrees of not Mars, of what sign is the full moon in? Oh Christ, Capricorn. But 18 is Mars and Capricorn the Earth. So within the full moon's coming up soon. I don't have the date in front of me, but it's coming up in about a week and a half to 2 weeks or so. So right before and right after could be a hotbed of activity around the Earth, as the aspects around this full moon will exacerbate that. The new moon that's later in the month focuses more on world politics, dealing with escalation of conflict, a big period of intense fires and volcanoes also. Now, New Zealand, Australia heads up also. We've seen oarfish washing up on shore, right? There were a couple more off of Mexico. So that's another reason to keep an eye on the Caribbean too. Oarfish are deep sea dwellers. And if there's like a lot of compression deep in the oceans, which underground volcanoes and earthquakes can cause, or just the movement, they try to escape that and rise to the surface. They decompressurize because they live very deep. So as they come into lower pressure, they basically explode. Sorry, but that's what happens. It's like a bad case of the bends, right? And then they wash up on the shore. So I think it was in Japan, they call that the doomsday fish. And right before the strongest earthquake they ever in modern history, a 9.1 was it off of Japan, that calls that mega tsunami. That was over 120 feet high. That one. What was that, 2011? Oarfish surfaced before that event around Japan also. So you got to keep an eye on that area, basically. So where else? In Australia, high potential for floods and fires. Could be unusual fires. Lots of protests down under, destabilization of government, or that's worldwide anyway. So there's definitely more on the weather and climate. Like I said, I have a whole video that goes into more detail. So back into science and technology, your new pandemic threat, possible stronger COVID strain discovered, new pressures for vaccinations. Interesting thing, I'm glad it came to my mind because I didn't write this in my notes. They gave me an image of a lot of pills being manufactured, like tons of pills. And I think this means there's going to be like an oral like COVID vaccine or something like that, or a medication that they're going to want people to take. We'll see if there's anything in the news as soon as July. And a lot of times I'll make predictions for certain months and it happens 1, 2, or 3 months later. There's things I predicted in April that haven't happened yet, basically. So timelines are fluid, and when I'm going into spirit, I'm going to a timeless reality. and trying to project a timeline in the physical, but it's a timeless reality. So timing could be off, is what I'm trying to say. But that was covered July, but especially August, big month of sky anomalies, UFOs, ET contact reveals, strange things in the sky. Basically, yeah, it's feeling like there could be some kind of a strange meteor strike or something like that. Um, Mid July could feature unusual solar activity, solar storms, sky anomalies. September to October can be massive for solar activity, but that's a little bit later on. We see a lot of discoveries around medicine, around technology. We may start hearing about some new devices, technology related to sound, maybe related to medbed technology. That's still out there somewhere. AI diagnostics for medicines. Uh, Trials for new cancer vaccines that may involve the AI and the RMNA cancer vaccine. So we may see some new level of trials around July. But I'm also seeing something around like MS or Parkinson's starting to get trials also. So I think there's a lot of advances that are coming. Remember, the more you can be in your heart and your power, and vibrate in a higher frequency, the healthier you're going to be. So preventive care is the best thing, and we have the ability to use natural things also to augment medicine, but also to stay healthy and to heal things in our own body. So August, bigger month for breakthroughs, but a lot in July still. Time of spiritual awakening, more people awakening than ever. I think July, August, big spikes in that. July is going to be the star. That's the numerology 17 in July and August. I mean, remember, work on raising your consciousness to feed the collective. That's how we're going to get through this in flying colors, and how potential deep challenges become major opportunities for your growth as well as global growth and ascension. Basically, collective awakening will overcome the wars and some of the suffering. Hearts cannot be programmed, so I'm coming back to that. Do your heart brain coherence. We have a whole playlist on the Medium channel on how to do that, or related practices, but things that work on building the frequencies of the heart. Your heart's your largest electromagnetic generator in the body. The heart's more the magnet. The brain is more the current. So what does magnets do? They direct currents. So when your heart and your brain are coherent, they feed off of each other, and you become more powerful, and your intuition develops, and you become more connected to spirit, basically. So you can do like heart, breath exercises, heart chakra work. You do different things, but we live in a very mechanized, very technological world. It's coming, it's becoming more technocratic, autocratic as we go on. So there's that specter of AI really running societies and whittling away at our freedoms. Not now, but things that we do now could help to offset some of those potentials. But I'm in front of my computer. There's a lot of technology around me, but it's electromagnetic also. So if you build the frequency of the largest electromagnetic generator in the body, you create a stronger field that resists the harm of electromagnetic frequencies and cell signals, 5G signals. And they use these frequencies to help to program people. Thank you so much for the super sticker and the donations, Ella. We love you. Thank you so much. And so really work on that, and then you can be safe in technology, and of course go out into nature, go barefoot, feel the flows. You can let the flows of spirit, source, energy, prana, chi, whatever you want to call it, the force, you can get that more in nature with the trees, with the wind. And if you let that flow through, it's going to clear a lot of energetic toxins. So we have tools. So don't view technology as like something that's going to kill everybody, basically. We have tools to offset that. At the end of the day, technology is a beautiful thing and part of our global awakening, but it can be misused by those forces that want to control everything and keep us out of our power to make us more controllable while they own all the power. But again, that's why we're in the tower energy. That's why the frequencies are higher. That's why everything's coming down to be rebuilt, because it cannot sustain in the new earth energies and the higher frequencies. Although, again, it's more like the velocity, the increasing of the energy at a higher frequency that precipitating that. So new spiritual leaders emerge, new peace movements emerge, spiritual practices can and will save people from literally going insane. Basically, in my yoga practice, they talk a lot about that. This is Kundalini yoga. There was a technology, and again, don't get jaded by the cult like appearance. That's just the male egos trying to own the practice. It's ridiculous, but Kundalini yoga itself was created, channeled for these times so that we can build our frequencies, build our strength, so that we don't wind up going crazy with all this going on. I mean, how many people are running amok out there and literally going crazy? But not you, because you're doing your spiritual work. That's the key. That's the difference, right? You're doing your spiritual work. So spiritual practice can save that. Stronger frequencies affecting the planet catalyze awakening, increase your energy fields, open you to higher spiritual energies, basically. That's a good thing. So the sun has a language all its own. So when we go into these solar maximum, we're getting fed a lot of light code frequencies from the sun. That happens. Well, the maximum itself's every 11 years, but solar maximum lasts about 3 years. So there's a big spike of awakening from 2012 through 2015. Guess what? That was the last solar maximum. It was a weaker solar maximum than this one also. The sun has a language. If you could time lapse solar activity over hundreds or hundreds of thousands of years, if you could time lapse that, you would see recognizable patterns. You would see a language in the sun of how it's with the flares and everything that's going on that really mimic sacred geometrical patterns that exist here on Earth and in space and in the collective, because sacred geometry is the geometry of the cosmos. That's why it's so powerful. And the sun emits that also. So does the universe. Everything has a hum. There's a low frequency vibration that goes through everything, including the Earth. Part of that is known as the Schumann resonance, right? So that's important to know that's like the underlying baseline frequency that supports all life and physical reality. So if we tune into our heart and we tune into the sound of Om, and we clear all the noise and all the distraction, we start to settle into that Schumann resonance. That's why we get so relaxed and chill, and why we expand so much, basically, because that is the frequency of the entire cosmos be going through the earth and all of that, and the sun too. So anyway, Om, recognize a pattern like sacred geometry. So everything does that. It's like flowers, like Tauruses, all those kind of stuff. So practice Om, practice presence. This again, this enlists your heart and mind, or links your heart and your mind, and more with the Schumann resonance, which is the chi and prana of the earth, or an aspect thereof. There's different levels of that. And don't, by the way, for the Schumann resonance enthusiasts, we see the spikes. See, most of our data comes from a place in Russia. Make sure that there's no thunderstorms there, because localized thunderstorms will affect the Schumann resonance also. I learned about this in the 1970s in my meteorology classes, and at the time it was thought that it's really thunderstorm activity that created the spikes. But anyway, just a word of the wise, to check that out. Anyway, which is the heart, right? Syncs with the heart, solar field, syncs with the heart and solar field. Allow you to expand consciousness to see beyond the illusion. So the Schumann is the baseline frequency that runs through the earth and everything in that. So there's more information in the summer forecast. Then when I was getting ready came in, a few new things came in. So I wanted to say, vision of mass production of pills. I already talked about that. Your drama, prayers. Okay, I think some strange record in baseball or sports, being, and then they show me the Dodgers. There could be something around Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't know. That just popped up. Winter within Earth, whether something severe will happen, large tsunami, image of wave comes to me. This could be, again, I think Japan's the most subject area, but of course, areas around the Northwest, Alaska, and that would affect, the entire West Coast. Need to be aware, tsunamis can occur, in the Atlantic if there's a a mid-Atlantic ridge eruption that could cause an Atlantic tsunami. It's always a possibility. So, we always have to be prepared. I think the Atlantic's pretty safe for now, but anyway, the Earth sometimes. All right, and keep an eye on. Also, I saw. Oh, well, I saw. Yeah, I've seen like an image of water, like kind of lapping up on Manhattan Island, like there's such a strong tidal surge, a storm surge that is causing flooding, kind of like what happened in Sandy and a couple of other events. So we could see big hurricanes, and the Gulf needs to watch out. Also, the southeast. I think with the number 18. See what happens around July 18th. There may be a big storm working in those areas. I want to say another bridge collapse. They're showing me a big suspension bridge, or a collision. So, also there could be also a major oil spill or pipeline issues. These are a couple of things. Again, there's going to be things that I miss, but anyway, that's kind of what I'm getting. So we've been an hour and a half. I think we got a lot of stuff accomplished here. All right, they're saying I'm just gonna pull a medicine card. I want to say just to get another quick message from Spirit, and I got the spider. That's the life weaver. Let me pull another one. Um, I have them right below me. What are the eagle and the spider? Very spiritual energy. So the spider to the life weaver. This is saying the more you can stay out of the noise and know that no matter what happens in the world, you're going to be okay. You're safe. You're the one that created us. Will take care of us always. Basically. So as long as you can stay in your heart, stay in your power, stay out of fear, because they want us to be afraid. You know, any day, something challenging can happen, and then you'll rise to the occasion, basically. So work on the heart, but also what's your ideal reality? Work on your prayers. Remember, prayer and law of attraction are very connected. In the book of Mark, Jesus I think it's to Thomas. I forgot who Jesus was talking to. Says, when you ask for something in prayer, feel like you already have it, and it shall be yours. And my Native American teacher that I heard almost word for word in a video by Greg Braden, which was really eerie, by the way. But back in the early 80s, I think it was 1982, I had so actually it's my friend Bob Vedder's teacher, but I met him. His name is Bob Fields. I don't know what his native name is. He's pure Pawnee, but he stopped us and said, when we pray for rain, it always rains, but we don't ask the creator to make it rain, because then we're only supporting the lack of rain. Instead, we feel the rain hitting our skin. We feel the rain nourishing the crops. We feel the rain nourishing the earth, and we give thanks to the creator for the rain that's already happening. We visualize that. And when we do that in groups, it always rains. So that's the lesson of the spider. We weave our own reality thread by thread, and then others are weaving their reality into the same web. So we're part of this great web of light, but we have our own unique thread within that web. And the web that you spin affects the whole web. Even if it's a tiny little part, it's still affecting the whole web. So you matter. And especially if you can help other people raise their consciousness, they matter also. So the more people that raise their energy, then we start to achieve peace. Then the earth changes aren't as severe. They're more fluid, and less people suffer, and the awakening happens faster, more seamlessly. So this is a time to really work on creating your reality, shutting out the noise, and knowing that you are a spiritual being and you connected with great spirit and source, and you're powerful. And a lot of the energies in July, but even more in August, are really going to support a lot of spiritual awakening. We'll talk more about that as we get close to that. Exactly. No man is an island. Exactly. So the eagle is so revered by the Native Americans. That's the opener of the spiritual doors, the doors of illumination. So I think, I was drawn to draw these cards for a reason. Spirit told me to take that. They told me to take the first card and the last card. This was the first card. This was the last card. So ego medicine is really, it's about, seeing. It's the medicine of the East, the opener to the doors of illumination. And I think it's a spiritual way of saying, no matter how challenging things get, remember, it's part of an awakening. The old has to fall, and don't let them interfere with your flow. There's actually in this collective field, the matrix, if you want to call it that, Maya, the matrix. I mean, I believe in that. But part of the matrix is there's a suppressing, like a lower frequency that tries to prevent us from being more spiritual, tries to put a cap on us. And therefore, when you try to meditate, I mean, you may relate this more to childhood issues or whatever, but I realized this in 1978 when I had my first awakening, that I felt the pressure against the awakening. I still seen people being activated by more of the Luciferian energies and just being very negative and trying to block me. This was back in 78. It's incrementally got more intense as time goes on. So there's a force. It's just part of our learning and growth. It's not nothing to be afraid of. It just is. But there's this energy that tries to keep us from being spiritual, that tries to keep us stuck in our own stories. And it's, bottled up in our own energy, and cutting us off from the greater energies and flow. This is one of the reasons I'm going to do for Spirit Fest 2025, a weekend retreat. It's going to be how to escape the matrix. Basically, we're going to teach you a lot of techniques and a lot of channeling and frequency work to help you to remove the bind of the matrix, being bound into that energy. And what happens with that? You remember who you are. You start to become your own spirit, experiencing your life through. You start to become multidimensional, and you no longer have limitations. You break through. And so we're going to teach you how to do that. There'll be information on the pinned comment on how to join that. It's only half full, by the way. It's a smaller retreat. 12 people max. I mean, I may take a few walk-ins, but we're going to keep it smaller. So it'll be a very small, powerful, and select group. And it's in the Catskill Mountains and right in the heart near Hunter Mountain. So we're going to do that August 1st through 3rd. So I'm glad that I pulled these cards. Yeah. Yeah, 193 people on the chat. We peaked at around 210. So we got a good group joining us, and more people watch this as a video. So again, I'm going to condense a lot of this and give you a more concise video, maybe like 20 minutes or so. I'll aim to keep it shorter and just highlighting things. So that'll be out in a few days. All right. If you want to join our inner core community, I'll leave information on how to join Spirit Mind Family. That's our Patreon group. And we're kind of chilling a little bit till after the 4th. I'll still be doing videos. We'll still do tarot time on Sunday, but there may be not so many shorts or other videos. Probably the only one I'm going to do is the condensed version of this, because I've got so much going on. I've got my son and his mom visiting, so there's a lot going on now. So any wondering who No Man is? Who is No Man? That might be some guide or whatever. Some men are islanders, but no man is an island. All right. Oh, I get it. It's a joke. Oh, I'm a little slow. I've had a very long day, full slate of readings and preparing this for you. So thanks for being here. I love you, and we shall see you at the next video.